champ now.
Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Formula 1 tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you've been on the tour.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Box Story. Today, the Brown Bomber and the old Mongoose. Boxing icon. Okay, how's the family today? Yeah, this idea I got from Al Booger. He was asking me why don't I talk about more old fights and stuff. So I'm gonna, for the 2 shows coming up, we're gonna talk about some old fights and some old fighters. Today it's gonna be not exactly a profile, but just a little bit about the careers and some fights that the Brown Bomber and the old Mongoose present. Joe Louis and Archie Boy. Okay, that's what we're doing today. And then, of course, tomorrow, the Boxing State series continues with Washington State. Really brief history of boxing in Washington State and some other significant events that occurred up there, like historic venues or big fights that occurred there. Washington State College. You know, when a state has a university that had a good boxing team back in the day, mention that because, you know, one time the NCAA had a boxing tournament, you know, like the NCAA basketball tournament, they had an NCAA boxing tournament. But in the early 60s, a boxer died as a result of a match, and that was it. Boxing kind of fell off as far as college. And so tomorrow will be the history. Washington State. We only got like 2 or 3 more states to go. We'd have been through the entire alphabet and looked at every state in the United States. And Friday, the profile is going to be the life and career of Vernon Forrest. Friday. Marco Antonio Barrera will be next week. I know I said Marco Antonio Barrera, but that will be next week, okay? But for the boxing, highlights of boxing history today, since we're talking about these 2 boxing icons, the Brown Bomber and Archie Moore, we're going to look at some of the most famous, iconic boxers of all time, okay? Some of the big name, most famous, iconic boxers of all time. But how's everyone today? It's Wednesday, hump day, okay? After today, we're on the way downhill toward the weekend. Okay, we got, this is, I think this is, what is this weekend now? 24th. This is like the last Saturday in May, I believe. And then we're on to June. We got some big fights coming up in June. Got another DB3 card. Shakur and Zepeda is in July. I don't think Tank and Roach is in June anymore. Somebody said, I heard August the other day or something. So we'll see what happens with that. I know they're talking about this nonsense about a Tank and Jake Paul fight in November. I don't agree with that at all. That's just like a circus act. This big 200-something pound guy fighting a lightweight 135 pounder. And then I heard, I was on the Angry White Men podcast yesterday, and I heard something Jake said the fight's gonna be at 190. And the hell Tank gonna weigh 190? 5'4", 190. Come on, man. That's crazy. Just put that fight in the circus where it belongs at, man. It's just a money grab, you know. Tank is my favorite fighter, but I'm not a fanboy. And I don't agree with something. I'm calling it out. I don't agree with that. Tank versus Jake Paul. Come on, man. I hope nobody buys it. I'm certainly not. You know, Jake is doing good for what he's doing with the women and everything, getting them paid, making some 12-round, 3-minute fights, but get out of the ring, Jake. You just fought a 58-year-old man, right? They wanted you to fight some real boxers, so you're going to fight a former real boxer, a 58-year-old man. Now you're going to fight a real active boxer, a lightweight, 135-pounder. Come on, man. Let's go to the highlights of boxing history. Some of the most famous and iconic boxers of all time. The show's going to be on these 2, on the iconic Brown Bomber and the old Mongoose. Let's talk about some other iconic fighters. For the highlights of boxing history. Let me turn this down now because I know it's going to come up on its own eventually. Right about there. How's everyone this afternoon? It's Wednesday, hump day. Okay, yeah, let's talk about some of these legends of the ring. Okay, got 8 of them. This is some of the most famous boxers of all time. Legends of the ring. Did these today since we're talking about Joe Louis and Archie Moore for the show. Let's talk about some other famous iconic boxers. Legends of the ring. Okay. Start out with Mr. Pound for Pound. Sugar Ray Robinson. But first, a little introduction. Not yet, Sugar Ray. Legends of the ring, some of the most famous and iconic boxers of all time. Now, boxing is a competitive combat sport that dates back thousands of years. This sport became well known worldwide in the past 300 to 400 years. Now, during this time, various new rules were introduced in the game, and we also got to see several world championships, right? Now, as boxing became more famous, it produced a great number of superstars in the ring. And today, we will look at some of the greatest and most famous boxers of all time, right? Now, all these players had something unique about them, which made them really fun to watch. Their fighting styles, supreme defense and offense skills, and displays of grit were the reason fans from all over the world adored them with their hearts and still do. So here are some of the most famous boxers of all time that are considered the legends of the ring, okay? Like I said, start out with Mr. Powerful Pound himself, Sugar Ray Robinson. Okay, Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, with a record of 175 wins, 19 losses, 6 draws, 2 no contests. With all that, skillful and famous as he was, in the 100 knockout club, 109 knockouts, Walker Smith, or better known in the ring as Sugar Ray Robinson, was able to win world titles both in welterweight and middleweight classes, okay? Now, he defended his welterweight title 4 times and then went on to middleweight with a single loss in 124 fights, right? He became a 5-time middleweight champion, winning over fighters like Gene Fullmer, Jake LaMotta, Conor Basilio, etc. Okay? Now, his signature move was the uppercut, which he executed with accuracy, speed, and strength. In his career, he competed in nearly 200 fights, winning 174, which is an impressive feat of boxing skills, okay? Dexterity and technique. Sugar Ray Robinson. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali. This legendary boxer of the 20th century ruled the ring from 1960 to 1981, and fans still consider him the greatest boxer as well as athlete and human being that ever graced the sport of boxing. Okay? He had a subtle grace in his movements, and his footwork was really something to behold. He holds a record of 56 wins, 5 losses, with 37 knockouts. Ali won the World Heavyweight Championship 3 times, which is a feat very few boxers have been able to do. He had a charismatic personality, both inside and outside the ring, which made him great to watch. The greatest, Muhammad Ali. Just talking about some other famous legendary boxers, since today's show is going to be focused on the Brown Bomber and the old Mongoose. Mike Tyson. Iron Mike Tyson, that is, the baddest man on the planet. Now, referred to as the baddest man on the planet, Mike Tyson earned the reputation as perhaps history's most feared boxer, holding the undisputed heavyweight championship for over 2 years. He left an indelible mark on the sport. Tyson's notoriety extended beyond the ring due to his controversial actions both inside and outside of it. Tyson's legacy is marked by a conviction for rape, and a pivotal moment occurred during a fight with Evander Holyfield, resulting in his disqualification for biting off a piece of Holyfield's ear. Now his record is nuanced, competing beyond his prime. With 58 fights to his name, Tyson claimed wins in 50, and an astonishing 44 of which were achieved by knockout. He faced defeat on 6 occasions and experienced 2 no contests, adding depth to his boxing journey. Mike Tyson, okay, and then knockout ratio. No, I had to do that. 50 wins, 44 knockouts, 88% on the dot for Iron Mike, okay? Next, some legends of the ring to start off today. Floyd, Pretty Boy / Money Mayweather Jr. With a ring career that spanned over more than 2 decades, from 1996 to 2017, this boxer holds a record of 50 wins, no losses, with 24 knockouts. Now, Mayweather was skilled in the art of hitting while not being hit because of his impeccable defensive technique. This boxing genius, famous for his quick reflexes, shoulder roll defense technique, and well-timed counter punches, and was able to take on fighters like Canelo Alvarez, Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Shane Mosley, and many others. Mayweather closed his career with a 10th round win over UFC fighter Conor McGregor. This fight was hailed as the greatest sporting event of all time. Also, Mayweather has taken part in MMA fights as well. Now, although the difference between boxing and MMA is apparent, both combat sports are highly competitive. Floyd Money / Pretty Boy / Mayweather Jr. Okay, next we have the Will o' the Wisp, Willie Pep. There's Willie going up against Sandy Sadler. Of course, Willie on the right. Okay, Willie Pep, the Will o' the Wisp. Pep was the highlight of the boxing ring from 1940 to 1966 and was able to maintain a record of 229 wins, 11 losses with 1 draw, 65 by way of knockout. In 1947, he suffered near fatal injuries in a plane crash, but that didn't stop him from becoming a 2-time featherweight champion. Fought 10 more times the same year he had the plane crash, okay? After the plane crash, he fought 10 times the same year. It was his sheer determination, perseverance both inside and outside the ring that made fans fall in love with him so deeply. Pep was able to win his first 63 fights in a row until he was defeated by Sammy Anger. After that 1 loss, he won 72 more with 1 draw, okay? So he came out of the gate 135-1 in his first 136 fights. 135-1 at one point in his career. He was again defeated in an epic encounter with Sandy Sadler. Both of these players had a history of great boxing matches and have fought about 4 times each with each other. Willie Pep and the great Sandy Sadler. Okay, this is just some iconic fighters since we're going to be talking about 2 of the greatest today. The Brown Bomber and Archie Moore. We talked about some of the other greats. Next, the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. This is him and Sugar Ray. And he really had to play Sugar Ray out of position for that fight. Look at Sugar Ray pissed off right there. Look like Roberto said, I might smack you right now. Look how pissed off he got Sugar Ray. And it really affected Sugar Ray's fight. Sugar Ray went in and brawled with Duran, and that was Duran's whole purpose. Look at it. I guarantee he said, I'll smack you right now. That was in a press conference promotion leading up to the fight. That's what he's saying. Telling Sugar Ray, I'll smack you right now. Look at Sugar Ray's face. Pissed off. Duran got him good. Yep. Won the fight before it even started. The Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Duran stayed in the ring for about 33 years straight, from 1968 to 2001, and holds a record of 103 wins, 16 losses, with 70 knockouts. Okay, only one of two men to fight in 5 different decades. He won the world lightweight title in 1972 and was able to dominate this division for 7 years straight. Okay, after outpointing Sugar Ray Leonard in 1980, Duran lifted the welterweight title. He lost to Leonard after 5 months in the rematch, but he was able to win junior middleweight titles after 3 years. In 1989, he became the WBC super middleweight champion by defeating Iran Barkley. The Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Look at him give a smack Sugar Ray right there. Sugar Ray was pissed off. Look at his face. Roberto, I should smack you right now. Okay, next, the Pac-Man, Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao. What's up, Manny? Manny Pacquiao, aka Pac-Man, started his career in 1995 and was named the Fighter of the Decade in the 2000s, 2001 to 2009, by the Boxing Writers Association of America, BWAA, with a record of 62 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, with 39 knockouts. Manny is a phenomenal athlete who defeated many giants in the game, including Marco Antonio Barrera, Oscar De La Hoya, Sugar Shane Mosley, etc. He is the first boxer to ever win world titles in 8 divisions, first and only, and the lineal championship in 5 weight classes. Lineal in 5, okay? His distinct style, power, and speed made him a force to be reckoned with. Very few players in this game were able to solve, right? And he was able to execute that double jab straight combination, right? Not too many others could execute that like the Pac-Man, that double jab straight combination. That's what got him knocked out against Marquez, though, remember? Manny tried that double jab, and Marquez ducked under that second one and came over the top of the overhand right, and it was good night for Manny. Next, Homicide Hank, Henry Armstrong. Final one, then we're going to get into the show. Henry Armstrong. This boxer had a relatively short ring career from 1932 to 1945, but was able to make his name in the boxing world with a record of 151 wins, 21 losses, 9 draws in the 100 Knockout Club with 101 knockouts. Armstrong was considered a deadly opponent, giving him the title of Homicide Hank. During his career, he defeated 15 champions, became the first player to hold world titles at 3 different weights simultaneously, and was able to win featherweight, welterweight, and lightweight titles in less than a year, from October 1937 to August 1938. Henry Armstrong will forever be considered a boxing genius and legend for his smooth footwork, powerful offense, and well-executed defense. Homicide Hank. Okay? So these are a few of the greatest boxers that have ever entered this sport. These amazing athletes were able to bring something unique to the game. This is why people love to watch them in action and will forever hail them as the real legends of the ring. These greatest boxers hold unbelievable records, and their stories have the power to inspire millions of sports enthusiasts around the globe. Okay, there you have it. Akeem Shabazz, What's up, Akeem? How are you today? We just getting ready to talk about the brown bomber and the old mongoose for today's show. We're going to talk about some fights, styles. Just a little talk about these guys, okay? Let's salute Azim Shabazz. So let's get ready to get into it. Today's show. The brown bomber and the old mongoose. Here they are with Big George. Big George Foreman. Just left us, what was it, last month? The Big George was an icon too, but I couldn't get all of them, on here. Just talked about some other legendary boxers to lead into these two legends of the ring. All right, but how's everybody today? It's Wednesday, hump day. Got a good one for you today. The old mongoose the brown bomber and the old mongoose. Okay. We're going to start out with Joe Louis. The brown bomber is going to be first. We're going to talk about his boxing style. Okay. What was Joe Louis's boxing style and what weapons made him one of the greatest? Okay. What was Joe Louis's boxing style and what weapons made him the greatest? One of the greatest. Okay, because he was certainly one of the greatest. No doubt. Joe Louis. The brown bomber. Here he is. Hopefully we get some more in the building. Appreciate everybody. Any up there out there listening. Appreciate you too for being here. Okay. But what was the boxing style of Joe Louis? And what weapons made him one of the greatest to ever step in the boxing ring? What's up, Mike Grimm, in the building? Here we're talking about the brown bomber and the old mongoose today. Yeah, Al Booker had asked me, why did I talk more about old fights? And I said, okay, yeah, talk about some old fights and some old fighters. Like we talked about Rocky Marciano and Ezra Charles yesterday, remember? So we're going to be doing that a little more, focusing on some old fights and fighters. Today, the brown bomber and the old mongoose. But again, what was the boxing style of Joe Louis and what weapons made him one of the greatest to ever be in the ring? Okay? Glad you asked. Glad y'all asked. Now, Joe Louis was a pure puncher who also had truly outstanding fundamental boxing skills and technique, taught to him by one of the great trainers in history, Jack Blackburn. Right? Yeah. Taught to him by Jack Blackburn, one of the great trainers of all time. Also a former fighter. Jack Blackburn is in the Hall of Fame as a trainer, but he should be in as a boxer too. And oh yeah, at the end, I'm still on that Hall of Fame thing. I got a direct comparison between two fighters. One not in the Hall of Fame and one in the Hall of Fame. And the one not in clearly had the better career. We're going to do that later. Direct comparison. Show you how the Hall of Fame means absolutely nothing. If the other boxer is in, the other one certainly should be in. Or neither should be in. But the one that's in had nowhere near the career that the one that's not in had. We're going to get into that later. Okay. Now, Joe's style was a stalker, a puncher who is an outstanding technical boxer who follows his opponents, timing them, setting them up for the deadly power punches he had. Okay. One of the best finishers in the history of the sport. When Joe Louis got you in trouble, you did not recover. Okay. Very seldom, if ever. Joe Louis Burrell was a unique generational athlete and talent. Now, his trainer, Jack Blackburn, fashioned Louis from a free-moving, free-wheeling amateur into a deadly knockout machine who patiently followed his opponents around the ring, set them up with pinpoint jabs, and generally knocked them out with what Floyd Patterson called in the International Hall of Fame Basic Boxing Skills book he wrote, the sweetest left hook I have ever seen, and the deadliest right cross. Left hook, right cross combination from Joe Louis. Floyd Patterson called it the sweetest left hook and the deadliest right cross. Now, a great boxer needs three things, according to the great trainer Emanuel Stewart, right? Hall of Fame trainer. Number one, of course, he needs talent, speed, strength, reflexes. Number one, talent. Number two, the willingness to work and devote yourself to be the best. And maybe most importantly, three, great people to teach you and be your team. That's important. Because remember Rocky yesterday, he had a manager that was cheating him. That was the main reason that Rocky retired so early, because he didn't want to make any more money for that cheating manager, and he was under contract to him. So Rocky said, instead of let you cheat me, I just won't fight anymore. How about that? So that's very important, number three on Emanuel Stewart's list. Great people to teach you and be your team. Okay, Joe Louis had that. What's up, Donnie Williams? Salute. Appreciate you joining us today, Donnie. We'll talk about Joe Louis and Archie Moore, the Brown Bomber, and the old Mongoose. Used to be the Mongoose, but Archie fought so long, they had to start calling him the old Mongoose. Because Archie was like, they say 50, but Archie was closer to like 70 probably when he retired. Maybe 60. But he was up there. He was 39 when he got his first title shot. And he kept that title until he was 49. We're going to get to Archie. We're on the Brown Bomber right now. We're going to get to Archie, though, the old Mongoose. Mongoose/old Mongoose. Yeah, but those three things are very important. Number three, great people to teach you and be your team. And Joe Louis Burrell had all three. Now, Sam Langford, one of the greatest fighters who ever lived, summed up Joe Louis when he said, the Brown Bomber is another Joe Gans, whom I consider the greatest fighter of all time. Fought Joe Gans, Sam Langford did. Sam Langford said, Joe Louis can hit, he is fast, and he is no slouch at employing ringcraft. I am glad I am still able to see enough to watch the boy. He is the marvel of the age, because Sam Langford was going blind. He was glad he was able to see enough to still watch Joe Louis. Right? I think he eventually did go blind. Okay. Now Jack Blackburn made Joe Louis Burrell into the great Joe Louis, right? And the story behind that is his name was Joe Louis Burrell, but so his mother wouldn't know it was him boxing. No, Joe Burrell. He went by Joe Louis so his mother wouldn't recognize it as being him. But Joe Burrell, Joe Louis, his mother knew it was him. But that's why he changed it to Joe Louis, and it stuck, right? Now, Jack Blackburn, best known as the Hall of Fame trainer of the great Joe Louis, but he was also a great lightweight boxer who engaged in over 160 recorded professional fights from 1901 to 1923. Now, Blackburn claimed to have had 385 fights in a time when boxing was illegal in many states, right? So most of his fights probably went unrecorded. And that boxing career shaped Blackburn's subsequent career as a trainer, right? He said he had 300 almost 400 fights, and 160 officially, but he probably did because, like I was saying, records was kind of sketchy because it was illegal and a lot of fights weren't recorded. But that boxing career shaped Blackburn into the great trainer he became. Made the Hall of Fame as a trainer, but not as a boxer, but he should have. He was on our list yesterday, remember? Now, never a champion, Blackburn still fought some of the greatest fighters of all time. He fought the legendary lightweight champion, the old master, Joe Gans, right? 3 times. He fought all-time great Sam Lightfoot 6 times, despite a major weight disadvantage. He fought the great welterweight Dave Holly 5 times. And he fought future lightweight champion Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. And he also fought the great Harry Graham, top 5 middleweight Harry Graham. Jack Blackburn fought all those people, and not in the Hall of Fame as a boxer. I'm glad he made it as a trainer, because it would be a real travesty if he wasn't in there at all, you know. But his plaque says trainer. It should have said boxer/trainer. Boxer should be first. Or he should have 2 plaques, one as a boxer, one as a trainer. I don't know how they do it, but his plaque should have boxer on it too. That's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, Blackburn even fought heavyweight Jim Barry. And he fought Gunboat Smith. He fought old Gunboat. Wow. He fought Billy Rocap. And Billy Rocap said the greatest fight he ever saw was Jack Blackburn's famous 15-round draw with Sam Lightfoot, right? In Marlborough, Massachusetts. Now, veteran boxing historian Charlie Rose rated Blackburn as the 3rd greatest lightweight ever in his 1968 rankings. Wow. That's high praise when you got lightweights like Roberto Duran, Benny Leonard. Them might be the 2 in front of Blackburn. Now, Jack Blackburn watched every bit of what trainers did during his 22-year career and applied it to become a truly great trainer himself. Blackburn trained 4 fighters who went on to become world champions. He trained bantamweight champion Bud Taylor, lightweight champion Sammy Mandel, welterweight champion Jackie Fields, and his prized pupil was heavyweight champion, the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Okay? Now, Louis was Blackburn's pride and joy, who he felt he had molded in the image of the great technicians of his day when he was fighting. You know, like Jack Johnson, Joe Jeanette, those guys was fighting heavyweights during Jack Blackburn's era. And he felt he molded Joe Louis into their image. Right? And into the image of himself, Blackburn, Joe Gans, Sam Lightfoot, guys like that. You know, Blackburn felt he had molded Joe Gans, fall behind those guys, quite like similar to them, you know. So, okay. Now, Joe Louis started in the unpaid amateur ranks with an amateur record of 50 wins and 4 losses with 43 knockouts, right? And he won that's excellent for the amateurs, excellent knockout rate for the amateurs, because, you know, amateurs is only 3 rounds and mostly concentrating on winning decisions. So, wow. 43 knockouts and 50 wins as an amateur is outstanding. That's a knockout ratio of 86%. That is outstanding for an amateur, you know, yeah. But anyway, 50 wins, 43 by knockout as an amateur for Joe Louis. That's 4 losses. And he won the Detroit Golden Gloves titles and the National AAU Light Heavyweight Championship in 1934 before he decided to turn pro. Now, Lewis's manager, John Roxborough, sought to hire Jack Blackburn to turn Louis into the champion they envisioned, right? And it happened. He turned him he did exactly that. The Blackburn was introduced to Joe Louis on June 25th, 1934. Okay. And he watched Joe sparring and hit in the heavy bag when he was introduced to him that day. And Blackburn said later, he saw at once, right away, Louis had natural punching power, something that could not be taught. You know, like in football, they say you can't teach speed. In boxing, you can't teach power. Excuse me. And Blackburn said the day he was introduced to Joe Louis and the first time he saw him spar, he saw right away he had natural punching power. But Blackburn said he also saw that Louis was completely dependent on that power, right? And he lacked solid fundamentals. Okay. He was too dependent on that power. So they got the right training because he was seeing these things the first day he met this man, right? So Blackburn talked of his observations of the young Lewis and what he thought he would need to become great, right? He said this to the Pittsburgh Courier on July 20th, 1935 about Lewis, saying, Lewis needed correction in everything except hitting. He said, I had to teach him to back up his punches with the proper timing, accuracy, and to instruct him in the proper art of balance. I trained him under the same methods I trained under when I was a fighter, okay? Now, Lewis spoke of what Blackburn gave him in his autobiography, Joe Lewis, My Life. This is Lewis said of Blackburn. Lewis said about Jack Blackburn. He saw my faults right away. I was hitting off balance. He corrected this by showing me how to plant my feet and punch with my shots. Punch with my whole body, not just swinging my arms. He said, people going to fights don't want to see a dancer or a clincher. They want to see a man who goes for the guts. He said I had strength and that I could beat or knock out anybody I wanted to if I planted my body in the right position. That's what Joe Lewis said about Jack Blackburn. Okay. Mike Magic. What's up, Mike? Talking about some famous, legendary, iconic boxers today. Idea I got from Al Booker. We're going to be doing this for a while. Just talking about some old fights and fighters. Like yesterday, we talked about Rocky Marciano and Ezra Charles, remember? Okay, so yeah. Jack Blackburn saw right away that Lewis had power, but he wasn't utilizing it correctly. He taught him how to utilize that power. You know, punch with his whole body, that kind of stuff. Plant his feet, you know, yeah. Okay, so. Lewis said his first week with Blackburn, the trainer did nothing but hold a heavy bag and taught Lewis how to actually punch correctly for an entire week. That's all they did, okay? Now, Blackburn developed Lewis into not only a boxer puncher of extraordinary power and authority, Blackburn taught Lewis to use short, compact punches. Compare his punches. Yeah, he taught him to use short, compact punches, okay? And you can compare Joe Lewis's punches with Deontay Wilder's wild bolo punch. Completely different. Deontay Wilder never had a Jack Blackburn to teach him how to utilize that power correctly. Just think if Deontay Wilder had a trainer like that. He probably would have 100% knockout ratio with the power he has. But Deontay Wilder never had no kind of training remotely like a Jack Blackburn. Just think. He would have 100% knockout rate because he had way more power than Joe Louis Wilder did. He just don't punch right, you know? But he still got a lot of knockouts, but he probably would be undefeated with 100% knockout rate. Because he gets his knockout just off of pure power, you know? Not with the right technique and training like Joe Louis had, okay? Now, Joe had weaknesses, though. Most could not take advantage of them. Emanuel Stewart explained once, no fighter is perfect. A good trainer finds his fighter's weaknesses and devises ways to defend them while finding his fighter's strengths and emphasizing those. Okay? That's from the great legendary Emanuel Stewart, right? No fighter is perfect, but he said the good trainers finds ways to defend the weaknesses while emphasizing the strengths. Okay? Now, Joe had weaknesses. Now, his chin was decent, but not great. He was not the fastest, a foot of heavyweight, though his hand speed was impressive. He compensated for his weaknesses with pinpoint accuracy, superb fundamentals, and truly impressive power. Okay? Al Booger. Yeah, Al Booger. I saw your comment the other day. Yeah, and I started incorporating that this week. You know, the old fights and stuff. Yeah, we talked about Rocky as a Charles yesterday, and we're gonna talk about Joe Louis and who was it? Max Smelling too in a moment, and also added some. We're gonna talk about some old fights. You know, from now on, not every day, but in a lot of shows, and some old fighters. Yeah. So yeah, this for sure is brought to you by Al Booger. Appreciate you, Al Booger. Yeah, salute. Yeah, so today we're talking about Joe Louis and Archie Moore, the Brown Bomber and the old Mongoose. And Al Booger says he had Breland teaching him, but he fired Mark and hired his buddy. Yeah, that was a bad mistake, Al Booger. Breland was way better for him than his buddy, the guy. He fought this guy. I can't think of his name right now, but Breland was 100% better, yeah. And he got mad at Breland because Breland stopped that fight against Fury. That was the whole reason he fired him, but it needed to be stopped, okay? Because he was getting tagged by this big 6'9", 300-pound guy, and it was going to be bad if Breland hadn't stopped. You know, it was going to be bad, real bad. But he wasn't going to win. He was going to get knocked out cold if Breland hadn't stopped it. So Breland saved him the embarrassment of laying on the mat sleeping, right? Made it a TKO instead of him going to sleep. But for that, he fired Breland and got this other guy. Breland was 100% better. Okay, but salute Al Booger. Let's go. Where were we? You were talking about Joe Louis and his great trainer, Jack Blackburn. Now, I forgot where was that? Yeah, there we go. Now, thanks to Jack Blackburn, Joe Louis was one of the best technical boxers to ever step into the ring. Joe Louis was the best finisher of all time. I was just talking about that. Yeah, when Joe Louis got you in trouble, that was all she wrote. Okay? I've seen a lot of old Joe Louis fights. And once he hurt somebody, I've never seen any of them recover. None. Zero, zilch, nada. Nobody. Okay, when Joe Louis was the best finisher of all time. Not even arguable. Grantland Rice, the great sports writer, described Louis as a brown cobra. In 50 years of Ringside Ring Magazine founder, Ned Fleischer said that Joe Louis was the most effective, deadliest boxer at finishing any opponent once they were in trouble. And Louis owed that to Jack Blackburn. Okay? Now, let's talk about Joe Louis versus Max Smelling 2. Okay? The question is, how did Joe Louis destroy Max Smelling so bad in the rematch? After Max Smelling stopped Joe in the first fight, in the first fight, Max had done his homework and he noticed that when Joe Louis threw his left jab, when he was bringing it back, he always brought it back low. He dropped it. You know, when you jab and then get back, bring your punches back to the defensive position. He always noticed Joe put it down kind of low when he was bringing it back. And he exploited, he waited, and caught him in that fight and knocked Joe out. Yep. Yeah. But Joe corrected that in the second fight. It only lasted the first round. And I told you, the fight lasted 2 minutes into the first round, and Max Smelling spent 2 months in the hospital. Joe was pissed off. That was his only loss to that point, was Max Smelling. And he won the title in between the two Smelling fights from, I think it was James J. Jeffries. But Joe said he didn't want anybody to call him champion until he beat Max Smelling. And he did it, right? Had a lot of pressure on him too for that fight. He even got called to the White House, and the president of the United States told him, one of the Roosevelts, that the entire free world was riding on him winning that fight, because if Hitler got that championship over there in Europe, that was going to be a real big propaganda tool if Max Smelling had won that fight. So it was a whole lot riding on that. That was an event. Yeah, one of the biggest fights in history still to this day, over 1936 25, what is that, like 90 years? Yeah, almost 90 years to the year, 1938. Like 87 years, something like that, right? 25 to 38. Oh, 87 years. I can count. It's 87 years. 45 to 25 is 80 to 38 is 7. And that fight is still one of the biggest fights in boxing history. Now, how did Joe Louis destroy Max Smelling so bad in their rematch? And they had that great trainer, Jack Blackburn, too. That helped, you know. But let's talk about it. Okay. Man, that's not where I want to be. This is where I want to be right here. How did Joe Louis destroy Max Smelling so bad in the rematch? I don't know who that is. Yeah, that's Max Smelling. I didn't know Joe Louis was so much taller than Max Smelling. Look at this picture right here. He had to have a serious reach advantage on. Look at that, man. Look like Joe Louis standing up on something, on top of a table or something. Wow. I didn't know he was that much taller than Max. That's crazy, ain't it? Ooh. But there they are right there with Matt. Somewhere. I just had it. I'm sorry. There they go. Yeah. Max Smelling and Joe Louis. Now, Joe Louis was a far better fighter in 1938 for the rematch than he was 2 years earlier in 1936 when they had the first fight. And Smelling is 9 years older than Joe Louis. He was 2 years older and had been idle. I think Smelling had like one fight in between them two. And that's like bad back then because in 2 years, you could have had like 20 fights the way they fought back in those days, but he had been idle, right? Plus, he was 9 years older than Joe, okay? Also, like I was saying, Joe had one of the best trainers in history, Jack Blackburn, correcting the flaws that produced the loss in the first fight in the first place, right? And Jack Blackburn designed a completely different fight plan for the second one, okay? And an entire different fight plan. So let's talk about how Joe beat Smelling so easily in the second fight. Okay. Now Booker says Max was 6'1" online. How tall was Joe? I don't understand. That's what I thought, Al Booker, and this picture is missing. I don't know how Joe is so much. I don't think Joe Louis was that much taller than Max Smelling, like that picture right there shows, right? You know, if Max was 6'1", Joe was only like 6'2", so what is the deal? That's more than an inch difference there, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Al Booker. Joe wasn't that much taller than Max Smelling. I always thought that picture was kind of weird, you know? Look at that. That is not right. He must be standing up on something. Got to be. Wasn't that much difference between them. Because Joe was only like 6'2", I think. I don't have time to check right now, but yeah, let's continue. That picture just don't look right. It's crazy, ain't it, Al Booker? Yeah, Joe wasn't that much taller than Max Smelling. No. But anyway, it is not as simple as Louis was more talented, though, the reason he beat Max so easily the second time. Now, he was more talented, but Max Smelling was one of 23 undisputed heavyweight champions in the Hall of Fame. He was an elite, great fighter and capable, with the right circumstances, of beating Louis, as he had already done one time before, right? So what happened? What happened? There are a number of reasons, time itself being one of them, okay? Now, Joe Louis was born in 1914, 9 years after Maximilian Smelling. Now, when the two fought in 1936, Smelling was 31 in his prime. Joe was only 22 then, and yet to enter his prime. So for the rematch in 1938, Max has slowed down a bit at 34. Now Joe was at 24. He was the best physically he would ever be at that point. Still maybe a little bit, but some people hit their prime early. Joe probably hit his prime early. And that was the best he ever was in that fight, that 2 against Max Schmeling. And plus, incentive Marley had something to do with it too. He wanted to beat Max Schmeling bad because that was still his only loss. And not just a loss, he was stopped. Okay? Not just a loss, he got stopped by Max Schmeling. So that stung. So incentive had a lot to do with it too. Now Schmeling was the only man to defeat Joe Louis in his first career up to that point. Well, really, before his first retirement, Schmeling was the only man to beat him, right? And the only man other than Rocky Marciano to ever stop Joe Louis. And Joe Louis shouldn't even have been still fighting when Rocky stopped. So the only man to stop the real Joe Louis, prime Joe Louis, you know. And Louis was anxious to avenge that loss. And the night he won the title, this is when he beat James J. Jeffries. This is what he said after that fight. I want Max Schmeling again. I ain't no champion until I beat Max Schmeling. Okay? That's what he said the night he won the title from James J. Jeffries. And Max Schmeling was supposed to get that fight. They really did Max Schmeling wrong because Max Schmeling had fought somebody in a title eliminator, right? James J. Jeffries was the champion. And Max Schmeling won the title eliminator. And then they went around Max Schmeling and gave the championship fight to Joe Louis because they did not want Hitler to get that title over there in Europe because they was afraid Hitler would just have Schmeling fight lower level European fighters all over Europe. And it would be years before an American would ever see the title again. And, you know, that wouldn't have been Schmeling's choice, but, you know, he would have had to do what Hitler wanted him to do, right? So they didn't even give Schmeling a title shot. They went around 6'2", right, Al? Only 1 inch. So, yeah. And Schmeling was 6'1", right? It's crazy. Yeah. And that is more than some 6'2" and 6'1" right there. That's like 6'6", 6'1". That's like 4 or 5 inches, right? So he had to be standing up on something or something. Or maybe they took 2 different pictures and put them together, but they're shaking hands. I was thinking maybe they're not right there together. They took pictures and put them side by, but they wasn't doing that way back then. I don't know what happened with that. It's just crazy. Yeah, Joe Louis was no way that much bigger, taller than Max Schmeling. Okay, yeah, 6'2". Joe Louis was 6'2", and Max Schmeling was 6'1". Right, that's more than 1 inch difference right there. Okay, yeah, but yeah, they really did Max Schmeling wrong because when Joe Louis got the title shot against James J. Jeffries, Schmeling was supposed to get it because he had won the title eliminated, but they didn't want him to have the title because he was a German fighter, and they didn't want Hitler to get his hands on that belt. Okay, so they gave Joe Louis the title shot, but they were not going to stop Joe Louis from fighting Max Schmeling because Joe Louis wanted to fight him again. Okay, and he was champion. So Max Schmeling did get a title shot. Now Max Schmeling has stopped Joe Louis in the only loss Joe has suffered in his first career, right? In 1936, with the backdrop of Nazi Germany and Hitler, the number 2 ranked contender and former heavyweight champion, German Max Schmeling, stunned the world and beat number 1 contender and rising superstar Joe Louis. Coming into the fight, Louis was a 10-1 favorite to beat the former champion. Schmeling had been champion before, okay? But Schmeling, one of the first fighters to use film to study his opponents, had noticed Joe carried his left low. And like I was saying, he dropped it after jabbing, leaving him open to counters, okay? And said Max is one of the first fighters to ever study film. And Max counters him with hard rights the entire fight, finally stopping the Brown Bomber in the 12th round. So Max tested that all night, testing that when Joe dropped, go through that jab and dropped the counter, and he finally got him right. I think it was like the 10th round or something when he finally, 12th round, he finally got that right punch in there. He knew it was going to come because Joe kept doing it the entire fight, and he always did it. And Max finally caught him in the 12th round and stopped Joe, okay? So, boxing historian John Vale writes about Smelling's upset of Joe Louis. Smelling's preparations were perfect, and his tactical dissection of Louis made the task at hand, defeating the undefeated Joe Louis, surprisingly easy. Okay? Yeah. Like I said, he stopped him. The German Nazi regime made Smelling's victory a propaganda event for the Nazi Superman myth, even though Smelling himself was never a Nazi. He was German, but he wasn't a Nazi. And a lot of people in the boxing world didn't like Smelling just because he was German. They just assumed he's German, he supports Hitler, but he didn't. Never did, okay? Never did. And when Joe Louis beat him in 1938, the Nazis made him join the Nazi army as punishment. He lucky he didn't lose his life. Real talk. He lucky Hitler didn't have him shot when he lost that fight, because Hitler lost a lot of face when that black man beat Max Smelling. So Smelling was lucky he did not lose his life, but he was forced to join the Nazi army as punishment. Yep. Now Smelling was denied his rightful title shot from 1936 into 1937. Okay. Now the number one contender after he beat Joe Louis, Max was denied his title shot as James Braddock. It was James Braddock, not James J. James J. Jeffries was way back there with Jack Johnson. What I'm talking about. It was James Braddock. They called him James J. Braddock too. James Braddock is the one. So Max Smelling was denied his title shot as James Braddock milked the title by not defending it at all and making personal appearances. Now the U.S. boxing establishment, knowing Braddock would not defeat Smelling, they knew he couldn't beat Smelling, and desperate to deny the Germans another propaganda victory, shelved the number one contender, and in 1937, blatantly ignored a contract so the number two contender, Joe Louis, could fight for the title instead of Smelling. That's what I was talking about. Smelling won the title eliminated, was supposed to fight Braddock, but they let the number two contender, Joe Louis, fight it because they didn't want Hitler to get his hands on the heavyweight title. And Joe Louis won that fight, right? But Joe Louis said, I don't care what y'all don't want Hitler to have. I'm fighting Smelling. His first title defense was against Smelling because Joe Louis wanted to avenge that loss. He didn't care about the boxing establishment, didn't want Hitler to get the title. Joe Louis said, I'm fighting Smelling. I don't care. So anyway, Monty Cox, big-time historian, summed it up best. He said Smelling likely would have beaten Braddock and become the first man to regain the heavyweight title if he had been given the opportunity. And Joe Louis would have never got that shot if Smelling would have won that title. Now, the German government refused to let Smelling fight for a year and a half after beating Louis in 1936 because the German government wanted the propaganda victory of a Smelling championship. They refused to let Max fight for a year and a half after he beat Louis, insisting he only fight for the title. Okay? It was by far, and that's what hurt him against Louis, because the government didn't let him fight for a year and a half. Okay? It was by far the longest layoff in Smelling's career. And he protested to Berlin to no avail, that he needed to fight to stay ready to fight Joe Louis again, especially since he was now in his 30s. Yeah, he desperately begged the government to let him fight, but they wouldn't do it. So I guess they finally let him fight Louis once Joe Louis got the title, you know. He reminded Berlin that Jack Dempsey's lengthy layoffs had cost him his title against Gene Tunney, which it did. Remember, Jack Dempsey got pissed off because the United States government wouldn't let the promoters make a fight between him and the #1 black contender, Harry Wills. So Jack Dempsey said, if y'all won't let me fight Harry Wills, I'm not fighting nobody. And he didn't fight for 3 years. And that cost him when he got in there against Gene Tunney. And going too fast. The German guy, what's his name? Max Melly told the German government that, brought that up to them about what happened to Jack Dempsey when he didn't fight for a long time. He ended up losing his title, but to no avail. It was like, oh, go pound sand or something, man. I ain't letting you fight. So anyway, none of it did any good. Now, once Joe Louis got the title, that's when German government allowed Smelling to have 3 tune-ups against 3 non-contenders. That wasn't the same as fighting contenders on a regular basis. You know, for a year and a half back then, you might have 10 fights. That's how they fought back then. So 3 fights against non-contenders meant absolutely nothing. Okay? But that's what they let him do before he had to face Joe Louis. Meanwhile, see, like I was saying, during this time frame in the year and a half when Max Smelling was fighting 3 non-contenders, Joe Louis had 11 fights in that time frame. And he had fought the heavyweight champion of the world, James Braddock, plus former undisputed champion, Jack Sharkey, rising contender, Bob Pastor, #2 contender, Tommy Farr, tough #3 contender, Nathan Mann, and underrated tough guy slugger, Henry Thomas. Joe Louis was fighting all these killers, and Max Smelling fought 3 non-contenders in that year and a half, when he should have had like 10 fights. That's how they fought back then. Joe Louis had 11 against top contenders. So that was really put Max at a real big disadvantage. The German government did that to him, right? Thinking they being slick, but they was hurting their own chances of getting the title, right? Yeah, Jack Dempsey was the man, AB, yeah. And he was not ducking Harry Wills. The United States government was blocking the fight. Tex Rickard, the leading promoter of the day, admitted, he said the United States government ordered him not to make a mixed race heavyweight title fight. Okay? Because of what happened between Jack Johnson and James J. Jeffries when the race riots and all that. But yeah. And Jack Dempsey got pissed off and didn't fight. And it cost him. But anyway. Okay, so yeah, they wouldn't let Smelling fight. Meanwhile, Joe Louis had 11 fights in that time frame. So Smelling came in at a big disadvantage. So while Smelling had gotten older and been idle, when he needed to fight the most to keep his speed, Max experienced, as he warned Berlin, he would inevitable decline, and was then only allowed to warm up a year and a half later against tomato cans. So Hitler, being slick, hurt his own chances of getting his hands on the title. That's what happens when you're arrogant and don't listen to nobody. Meantime, Louis had met and beat at least 6 world-class heavyweights in 11 fights and got a lot better, because remember, Joe was only 22. Now he was almost to his prime by the second fight. And he fought 11 fights. 6 of them was world-class heavyweights, while Max Smelling fought 3 tomato cans, right? And that's what that's not me calling them that. Max Smelling said they were lower level. So for various reasons, time, politics, the 2 fighters who met in 1938 were completely different than the 2 who met in 1936, okay? And Smelling's destruction, let's talk about his destruction by Joe Louis in the rematch. Let's talk about that destruction. Here's the crazy picture again. Yeah, that was a total destruction. 2 minutes fight, 2 months in the hospital. Then a month per minute in the hospital. Now, as noted, Joe Louis had said repeatedly he would never feel like the real champion, the true champion, until he beat Max Smelling. And in their second fight, he destroyed the German in what is one of the worst beatings in heavyweight boxing history. Well, boxing history, period. Jack Blackburn, one of history's greatest trainers, had devised a completely unexpected fight plan for Louis. Now, normally, Joe was a stalker, a boxer puncher who used his jab to set up deadly counters. Smelling was prepared to out-jab Joe as he had done in the first fight. But this time, Blackburn had prepared Joe to literally roar out and pummel the German from the sound of the bell. Okay? They threw the jab out the window. Now, Joe was determined to end the fight early and avoid a lengthy technical fight. And wow, did he do that? Did he ever? He floored Smelling 3 times in the first round and hit him with a body shot so hard that Smelling was hospitalized after the fight because it broke his back. A doctor who treated Smelling said Smelling suffered fractures of the transverse processes of the 3rd and 4th lumbar vertebrae with a hemorrhage of the lumbar muscles. Joe Louis did all that with 1 body shot. Wow. So newspaper reports after the fight confirmed broken bones in the back. Okay. Now, after that hook and a vicious right to the body, which caught Smelling in his back as other punches turned him, Smelling screamed in agony. Art Donovan, the referee, immediately sent Lewis to his corner and checked Smelling, who wanted to continue. Now that's a real soldier. All that stuff up in your back broken, right? And you still want to continue. Imagine getting hit there again. I would have said that's it. I would have went on down and just laid there on my elbows and watched the referee count to 10. And then say, get the stretcher, man. Just told the referee don't even count, just get a stretcher. But anyway, Smelling told Art Donovan he wanted to continue. The next solid shot he caught put him down again, and that was the end of it. The fight was over. The referee Donovan would say later that he knew after the body shot that Smelling was all done. He had nothing left. So why did you let it continue then? The referee said after that body shot he knew it was done, but he let it continue. You know, even if he said he wanted to continue, that's the referee's judgment. He can still stop it. And if he knew the man was done, stop it. It could have been some more serious damage done, man. That was crazy. You knew the man was done, stop the fight, man. Right? But anyway, yeah, that was it. The referee, Art Donovan, stopped it. But Art Donovan was a great referee back then. Now, when Smelling returned to Germany after the loss to Lewis, he was completely shunned by the Nazis. But despite being out of favor, he was spared arrest and allowed to fight. And he won both the German and European heavyweight championships on February 7th, 1939, with a first round knockout of Adolf Hauser. That's what I was talking about. They said he could have potentially been arrested when he got back for losing that fight to Joe Louis, but they allowed him to fight. He could have been arrested and been shot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was Smelling's last fight for 8 years and the real end of his career. The few fights he had 8 years later were on a wounded leg, crippled by the war. He did go fight in the war. Ironically, a decade later, Max Smelling, who lived through the war and became well-to-do in a story you could not invent, Max became great friends with Joe Louis and assisted the former rival financially from then on, repeatedly helping him avoid homelessness and poverty. The only thing Max asked of his friend was that Joe not tell anyone what he was doing. The once bitter rivals became like brothers. Yeah, Max was helping Joe, but he didn't want any credit for it. He told Joe Louis don't tell anybody about the assistance he was given, right? That's from the heart there, you know? Ant McQueen, what's up, Ant? Ant says, Archie Moore is no fun to watch. Okay, yeah, we get ready to talk about it, man. The old Mongoose. Yeah, but Joe Louis destroyed Max Smelling in that second fight. Yeah, a lot of it was he just wanted to beat him so bad, you know? But yeah, Archie Moore. We're going to talk about the old Mongoose now. Ant says he's no fun to watch. Yeah, I can see what Ant's saying too. Archie had that, he would kind of like bend down all the time when he fought, you know? Yeah. But let's talk about the Mongoose slash old Mongoose. But salute, Ant. Good to see you today. Yeah, Ant listening all the time. He don't comment much, but when Ant comment, it's something significant. So Archie is no fun to watch. Okay, let's talk about it. The Mongoose slash old Mongoose. Because remember, he was the Mongoose when his career started, but he fought so long, they started calling him the old Mongoose. I think it was 28 years that he fought. Archie did. It took him 16 years to get a title shot. Now, this is the question. Where do you rank Archie Moore all time at light heavyweight? Okay, where do you rank him all time at light heavyweight? Archie Moore. Okay, let's talk about it. There's Archie. Where do you rank him all time at light heavyweight? He's up there. He still has the record for the longest title reign at light heavyweight, 10 years. Because, you know, Archie, like I said, he took him 16 years to get a shot, but when he got it, Archie held on to it because it took him so long to get a shot. He felt if he lost it, he probably would never get another shot, right? He was 39 when he won it. He said kept it until he was almost 50. Now, Archie Moore, the old Mongoose, is one of the greatest fighters of all time. He had an incredible career with a record of 186 wins, 23 losses, 10 draws, 132 knockouts. That's number 2 all time. Billy somebody has 136. Okay, 132. That will never be broken. Nobody will even fight that many times, let alone knock out 132 people. That's number 2. Billy, I forgot his name, has 136, right? Now, Archie was the longest reigning world light heavyweight champion of all time. He held the title 9 years and 5 months. I just rounded it off to 10 years, but officially 9 years and 5 months, okay? And Archie has one of the longest boxing careers in the history of the sport, competing from 28 years, 1935 to 1963. 4 decades. 4 decades. And Roberto Duran and Jack Johnson had 5. That's the record for decades. Now, Archie has one of the highest number of recorded knockouts, 132. BoxRec ranks Archie as the best light heavyweight boxer of all time and the 3rd greatest pound-for-pound boxer of all time. Wow. BoxRec has a number 3 all-time pound-for-pound, number 1 light heavyweight. Now, Ring Magazine has Archie ranked as the 4th greatest puncher of all time. Okay? Yeah, he was crafty. That's the perfect word, Al Booker. Crafty. That's the word I was looking for when Ant made the comment. Fun to watch. No fun to watch. Crafty. That's the perfect word, Al Booker. Crafty. That describes Archie Moore to a T. He was definitely crafty. Yeah. That's it. That's the word I was looking for, but I couldn't come up with crafty. Now, Archie was also a famous boxing trainer. He worked with Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and James Quick Tillis, among a few others. Archie lived a long life. He died in 1998. He was 84 years old, right? He was very sharp in his old age. He had no obvious symptoms of CTE. No obvious symptoms, okay? Now, a lot of people say he was the greatest ever. And that included Gene Tunney, who was also a great light heavyweight. But if you count Ezzard Charles, Archie would have to be number 2. And Ezzard was never light heavyweight champion, right? But considered the greatest light heavyweight of all time. That's crazy. Never the light heavyweight champion. But they say he was the greatest of all time. Ezzard was ducked too, yeah. But although he is ranked by many as the greatest light heavyweight champion in boxing history, Archie Moore is overall number 2 at light heavyweight, behind a man who was never champion of the world at 175, Ezzard Charles, the Cincinnati Cobra. Now, the reason above all others is the fact that 3 times Ezzard beat Archie Moore in a series of fights in the 1940s. Not only that, but he actually knocked the old Mongoose out in the final of that trilogy. All fought at light heavyweight, right? And if that doesn't make Ezzard the best at light heavyweight, nothing else will. He beat Archie 3 times, and the last time he knocked him out. So yeah, you would have to pick Ezzard over Archie. Okay, that's not no well, this one beat Archie and Ezzard beat that one. No, he beat Archie 3 times. Okay, so yeah, you have to put Ezzard over Archie. Have to, right? Now, Ezzard was the 175-pound division's finest fighter, and the 2 decision defeats, and both were overwhelming decisions over Archie, and his knockout over Archie pretty much proves it in the eyes of virtually all boxing historians and box stories, right? Now, Ezzard Charles, the Cincinnati Cobra, started fighting as a middleweight right before World War II. Now, when he returned, he began campaigning as a light heavyweight, and he defeated an incredible 8 Hall of Fame fighters in 20 fights, winning 19 of them. He fought Joe Louis, Teddy Arose, Charlie Burley twice, Lord Marshall twice, Jersey Joe Walcott twice, Archie Moore 3 times, Jimmy Bibbins 4 times, and Joey Maxim 5 times. That's how they did it back then, right? Fought each other a number of times. But Charles could not get a shot at the light heavyweight title. So he moved to heavyweight, where the money for regular fights were better, and a title shot was easier to come by at heavyweight. Now, though Charles in his prime never weighed more than 185 pounds, and it was without question a natural middle or light heavyweight, he was named Ring Fighter of the Year for 1949, and he fought primarily at heavyweight that year, okay? Ring Fighter of the Year for 1950, primarily at heavyweight. He was the greatest light heavyweight of all time by Ring Magazine in 1994, the 11th greatest heavyweight of all time by Ring Magazine in 1998, and the 13th best fighter pound for pound of the last 80 years by the Ring Magazine in 2002. Okay? So, considering that he had ALS, commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, which killed him on May 20th, 1975, his career was all the more incredible. Charles said he first noticed the ailment in 1955. He had that when he fought Rocky Marciano, as we was talking about yesterday. He said, after the guy hit me, I didn't seem to be able to get away, he said. I didn't have the same coordination. However, modern physicians believe it probably was affecting him to some degree at least 5 years earlier, meaning he had a deadly nerve disease during the time he defeated Joe Louis by a 15-round unanimous decision on September 27, 1950, to gain universal recognition as world heavyweight champion, and during the time he made 8 successful title defenses. Also, when he twice had 2 bitter fights with Rocky Marciano, right? Indeed, both of these fights Rocky called the hardest and toughest fights of my career. Ezzard Charles had ALS during those fights. Incredible. That's crazy. Yep. Define Arnie 1. What's up, Define Arnie 1? Talking about some legends today. The idea Al Berger gave me. We're going to be talking about some fights, old fighters on shows coming up, you know? Yeah. But salute Define Arnie 1, our friend from Puerto Rico. Okay. Yeah. Ezzard Charles had ALS when he fought Joe Louis, made 8 successful title defenses, and 2 tough fights against Rocky Marciano. Fights Rocky called the 2 toughest of his career, hardest and toughest. Okay. Now, Ezzard is the unquestioned greatest light heavyweight of all time, one of the top 20 all-time greatest heavyweights. Now, Archie Moore, okay, while coming in second to Ezzard Charles as a light heavyweight, is far and away the all-time greatest actual light heavyweight champion, because Ezzard never had the title. Okay, so Archie is the best light heavyweight champion. Now, the old Mongoose also started his career as a middleweight, like Ezzard Charles did. He's the only man in history to be ranked as the #1 contender in 3 different weight divisions, right? Middleweight in 1942, light heavyweight in 1950, and heavyweight in 1955. Only man to be ranked #1 in 3 different divisions. Wow. Nonetheless, Archie never got a title shot in any weight class until he was 39 years old. Now, he defeated Joey Maxim by a 15-round unanimous decision to win the World Light Heavyweight Championship on December 17, 1952, 4 days after his birthday. And he finally got a title shot when the promoters thought he was too old to win it. But he fooled them. That's why he got the title shot, right? They thought he was too old to win it. But he fooled them and won it. Not only won it, he kept it for 10 years. He really fooled them. They thought the old Mongoose was too old. Give him a shot. He can't beat Joey Maxim. He not only beat Joey Maxim, he kept it for 10 years into the 60s. Okay? He really fooled them. Wow. And Archie was named the 1958 Boxing Writers Association of America Fighter of the Year. He was inducted into World Boxing Hall of Fame in 1980, the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990, and he was voted Light Heavyweight Fighter of the Century by the Associated Press in 1999. That's high praise. Associated Press, Light Heavyweight Fighter of the Century. And that's because Ezzard Charles was never champion. Archie was champion. Ring Magazine ranked Archie as the 14th best fighter of the last 80 years. And Ring Magazine also ranked Archie as the 4th greatest puncher of all time in 2003. 132 knockouts. Okay. And Archie entered the top 10 in 1940 as a middleweight. Okay. 1940, number 4 at middleweight. He retired in 1941 due to stomach ulcers, but he returned in 1942. In 1942, he was the #1 contender at middleweight. Okay. 1943, he was number 10 at middleweight. Then 1945, he was #1 contender at light heavyweight. 1946, he was dropped to number 3 at light heavyweight. 1947, number 2 at light heavyweight. 48, number 3 light heavyweight. 49, number 2 at light heavyweight. Okay. And then 1955, he was the undisputed light heavyweight champion and #1 ranked contender at heavyweight. That's when he became the only man to be ranked #1 in 3 different weight categories. 1957, undisputed light heavyweight champion. 1958, undisputed light heavyweight champion and #6 heavyweight contender. 59, undisputed light heavyweight champion. 60, still undisputed light heavyweight champion. 61, undisputed light heavyweight champion. 62, he lost his light heavyweight championship. He was #9 heavyweight contender. And Moore was ranked an absolutely incredible 21 years, 18 straight years, 16 years number 3 or higher. 11 years as undisputed light heavyweight champion. Moore has an incredible 132 knockouts, the most of all time, second most of all time in any weight class, and a record which will never be broken, never. The last 30 fights of Moore's career, after he tried the second time for the title at 39, he lost it to Rocky. He lost to Muhammad Ali, right? And after turning 40, Archie, he had 30 fights after turning 40. He went 29-1. 29-1 after turning 40, okay? He was also the first fighter to use the ropes extensively as he aged, to force opponents to punch themselves out, while the wily Mongoose lay on the ropes, slipping punches and waiting to counter. That's what Ant was talking about. Now, the first fight he used his defense then occurred on December 10th, 1958 at the Forum in Montreal against a French-Canadian named Yvon Durrell. That was a big fight there. He would later show his defense to a young Cassius Clay. And Moore was beat. He was best summed up by a comment he made after beating Yvon Durrell in a rematch. Moore smashed Durrell in just 3 rounds, knocked him down 4 times in the 3rd round. It was a hard fight. I just made it look easy, Moore quick. Now, that Hall of Fame thing, I got 2 fighters. One in the Hall of Fame, one not in the Hall of Fame. Let's compare that. One in, one not. I think the one that's not in has a better, favorable career than the one that's in. We got Ernie Terrell, that's not in the Hall of Fame, and oh Lord, what's this guy's name? Oh my goodness, I can't remember the man's name, man. Let me pull the thing up. Damn, that's great. He fought Floyd Patterson 3 times in the 60s, late 50s, once in the 60s. What was his name? Ingemar Johansson. I really forgot his name. Ingemar Johansson is in the Hall of Fame, right? Ernie Terrell is not. Let's compare them. Let's take a look at this. This is very interesting. I'm still on the Hall of Fame thing from yesterday. People that deserve to be in there and not. Let's look at this. Let me get some link time after this. Where is it? I know I put it on in the lineup. I can't find it. Oh my goodness. Okay. Gotta do it again. Isn't that crazy? But it should pop up after I type a couple words. I don't know where it is. Let's see. I'm gonna type Ernie Terrell, see if it pops up. Yep, there it is. I just typed Ernie and it popped up. I put it on the lineup earlier. Okay. Should Ernie Terrell be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame? So boxing is not like other sports. Like I was saying yesterday that somebody's off the ballot, but boxing seems like you can always, any year they can pick you and put you in there. Like baseball, after a certain amount of time, that's it. You know, I guess people can write you in, but I don't know. But anyway, should Ernie Terrell be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame? Okay, let's talk about it. Now, Ernie is in the lesser World Boxing Hall of Fame, right? And it's borderline for the International Boxing Hall of Fame, but he's better qualified than some that are actually in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Ernie is a real borderline case for the Hall, but like I said, he is clearly superior to some already in, such as Ingemar Johansson. Now let's make Ernie's case for the Hall. Now, although Ernie Terrell is not in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, like I said, he's in the earlier hall, the World Boxing Hall of Fame. International is the bigger, more prestigious one. Okay. Now, Ernie Terrell was born on April 4th, 1939 in Inverness, Mississippi. His father was a dirt poor sharecropper. He was one of 10 children, and the family struggled on a small farm during Ernie's early childhood. But finally, his father moved the family north to Chicago, where he found employment in the factory. And like so many dirt poor kids, Ernie found boxing as a way out. Now, his qualifications for the International Boxing Hall of Fame are, okay, a highly successful amateur fighter. He ended his pro career with a heavyweight title, went ahead of heavyweight title, 2 successful title defenses, and a record of 46 wins and 9 losses while fighting in the best age of heavyweights ever. He held the WBA heavyweight championship for 2 years, defeating Eddie Macon and defending it twice successfully against George Chuvalo and Doug Jones, 2 pretty good heavyweights, okay? Both times, Jones was ranked number 2 by the WBA, and Chuvalo was ranked number 2 as well by the WBA. They were the highest ranking contender willing to fight Terrell. Okay, now that's significant, remember that. They were the highest ranking contenders willing to fight. Now, Terrell lost his title in a unification fight with WBC champion Muhammad Ali in 1967 in the legendary What's My Name fight, okay? And Terrell defeated 6 opponents ranked number 3 or higher in their career. Dora Farley, Eddie Macon, Cleveland Williams, Bob Foster, George Chivallo, Doug Jones. In addition, Terrell faced 2 other opponents ranked number 3 or higher, who he lost to, Muhammad Ali and Thad Spencer. That is more fighters ranked number 3 or higher than Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, and Anthony Joshua have met and or defeated combined. Now, Ernie also faced, and I bet you all 3 of them get in. Now, Ernie also faced 2 more contenders who were ranked number 4 or higher. In addition, he faced 2 other opponents ranked number 3 or higher who he lost to, like I said, Muhammad Ali and Thad Spencer. Terrell also faced 2 more contenders who were ranked number 4 or higher in their career, Jose Luis Garcia, Manuel Ramos. Further, Ernie achieved 2 of the rarer feats in boxing, being ranked in the top 10 in 2 different decades and being ranked top 10 a decade apart, 10 years apart, like being in the top 10. Entering the top 10 in 1963, Ernie was ranked for 6 of the next 10 years as follows. 1963, number 3. 1964, number 3. 1965, number 1. 1966, number 1. 1967, number 10. Then, incredibly, after 5 years out of the top 10 and 10 years after first making the top 10, Ernie returned to the top 10. 1972, number 6. Those are his qualifications for the Hall. Now, let us examine the qualifications of Ingemar Johansson, who is already actually in the Hall of Fame, okay? So I'm just saying that Ernie is borderline qualified, but if Ingemar Johansson is in there, Ernie Terrell should be in there. Listen to this, okay? Take a look at Ingemar Johansson. Johansson won the undisputed title from Floyd Patterson in 1959 and lost it in the rematch, holding the title 6 days less than a year. Ernie had it 2 years. Johansson defeated 3 opponents ranked number 3 or higher in their career. Ernie was up in the double digits, okay? Champion Floyd Patterson lost to him in 2 he lost to Floyd Patterson in 2 rematches, okay? He faced 1 fighter ranked number 4 or better in his career, Henry Cooper. Johansson was ranked 6 straight years, 1956 number 7, 58 number 1, 59 champion, 60 number 2, 61 number 6, 62 number 4. Now comparing the 2 men, careers are judged, as the great Hall of Fame trainer Jack Blackburn said, on who you beat, when did you beat them? Who you beat, when did you beat them? That's true. That is so true. Who you beat and when did you beat them? How did you beat them? Okay? Those 3 things. Who you beat, when you beat them, how you beat them. Now comparing their rankings, both men were ranked in the top 10 for 6 years. Now Terrell ranked number 1 twice in a far more competitive age, and number 3 twice. Edges Johansson, who is ranked at the top twice and number 2 once. Plus, Terrell was ranked 10 years apart, a very unusual and impressive feat. Comparing competition, there is no comparison between the competition these 2 men faced. Terrell faced 10 opponents ranked number 4 or higher, beating 6 ranked number 3 or higher. Johansson faced 4 opponents ranked number 4 or higher, beating 3 ranked number 3 or higher, and losing to one of them twice, okay? Terrell made his 2 title defenses against the highest contender willing to fight. Johansson did not, bypassing dangerous number 1 contender Dora Farley, a man he and Patterson avoided their entire careers. Terrell fought and defeated. Far better competition. The only real advantage Johansson has is that he was undisputed champion for less than a year. Okay? While Ernie held part of the title for 2 years when Ali was undisputedly the better fighter. But that does not make up for the difference in competition, especially since Terrell fought in the most competitive era in heavyweight boxing history. And Johansson is in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and Terrell is not, with a superior record. If Johansson is in the Hall of Fame, Ernie Terrell sure as hell should be in there. Judge for yourself. The International Boxing Hall of Fame is a complete, total joke. That right there has. Now, Ernie Terrell is borderline, but if Ingemar Johansson is in there, Ernie Terrell should be in there, right? Or neither should be in there. What's the criteria? Do they have, what do they go, any, meeny, miny, mo? How could you look at Ingemar Johansson's record and put him in, and look at Ernie Terrell's record and not put him in? Just what I just said. Don't they have the information in front of them, whoever, the writers or whoever makes the picks? Do they have this information? If they had that, either both of them would be in or neither would be in. There's no way Ingemar Johansson should be in the Hall of Fame and Ernie Terrell is not in the Hall of Fame. No way, man. The International Boxing Hall of Fame is a complete and total joke. Okay, it means absolutely nothing. Nothing. It means absolutely nothing, man. Nothing. That right there. Ernie Terrell fought in the golden age of the heavyweight. Ingemar Johansson was champion for 6 months. Ernie Terrell was champion for 2 years. And the only advantage Johansson has, for those 6 months, he was undisputed champion. Terrell was never undisputed because he fought it. Ali had the other title at that time. And then Ali after those 2 years, he took Terrell's title away. Only way Terrell had it was because they stripped Ali because the WBA wanted him to face Terrell, who was the #1 contender, instead of facing Sonny Liston in the rematch. And Ali fought Liston, so the WBA stripped him. So we only had WBA, WBC then, so Ali had the WBC. Terrell had the WBA, but then 2 years later, Ali took the WBA from Ernie Terrell. But Ernie had it for 2 years. Ingemar Johansson was only advantage. He was undisputed, but it was only for 6 months. Man, come on. The International Boxing Hall of Fame is ridiculous, man. Thomas Hill, what's up, Thomas Hill? What's happening? Okay. Oh, damn, I'm supposed to put the link in. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this Hall of Fame thing alone, though, man. But that it's a joke. What were the people that's making the picks? Did they have that information in front of them? It's nowhere in hell Ingemar Johansson should be in the Hall of Fame and Ernie Terrell is not. Either both should be in or neither should be in, man. You know? Ingemar Johansson ducked the #1 contender. Terrell fought the top contenders that were willing to fight him. Okay? So I don't understand that. It's a joke. It means absolutely nothing, to be in there. Nothing. Not to me, it doesn't. I mean, no fight. It shouldn't even mean nothing to the fighters. Because it's clearly people. Now, Ernie Terrell is borderline. Maybe he shouldn't even deserve to be in there. But Ingemar Johansson sure as hell doesn't either. If they put Ingemar in, Ernie should be in, or neither. Both of them should be in, or neither should be in. Not Ingemar Johansson and Ernie Terrell, not. And I'm sure there's many other cases. Esteban de Jesus is not in there. If I compare him and Ingemar Johansson, it really look ridiculous. What Esteban de Jesus did compared to Ingemar Johansson. Come on, man. Esteban de Jesus beat Roberto Duran. The hands of stone. That should put him in right there. Right? He beat Roberto Duran. Okay. Oh yeah, let me show you this picture. Roberto had Sugar Ray totally psyched out before that first fight. Look at that. That was a promotion before the first fight. Sugar Ray looked like Roberto said, I should smack you right now. He had Sugar Ray totally psyched out and pissed before that fight. And Sugar Ray came in there mad. And that's what beat him. That's what the Roberto read his lips. He said, I should smack your ass right now. Look at Sugar Ray's face. He is mad. He can't wait to get in that ring and hurt Roberto. And he ended up losing. Quit smacking Roberto. That's what he's telling him. I can't wait if I smack you right now, Sugar Ray. Look, he got his hand there. He really played a deep. He had Sugar Ray beat before the fight started. And Sugar Ray fought the Rand fight, but he still did a great job in that fight, though. Still did a great job in it, but he lost. Yeah. Then he cheated in the second fight. He got Duran all big, over 200 pounds, and made him fight real fast. Sugar Ray cheated the second fight. Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was bragging so much about Roberto Duran and stuff before that second fight, man. And when I went back to school after the second, they started calling me No Mas. Yeah, they was teasing me, calling me No Mas, man. Yeah, but it's okay. Roberto came back and became a champion again, so he redeemed himself very well. Okay, he should have went on and smacked Sugar Ray right there, but no. But he did real serious. He had Sugar Ray really messed up before that fight. He had him mad. He talked about his wife and everything, his dog. Said his car was ugly. No, I made that part up. But yeah, he really did do a number on Sugar Ray before that first fight. You can tell right there. He's working on it. Mm-hmm. But Thomas Hill, what's up? RP, Ray Patterson in the building. What's up, RP? Yeah, he got in the second fight. T Hill. Just got in the second fight. He cheated. He knew Duran was out of shape. Yeah. It wasn't the best Duran. Okay. It wasn't the best Duran. But no, he beat him fair square. That was Roberto's fault for going up there partying too much. You know, he knew he had the rematch was in the contract. So he should have stayed in shape. They say Roberto was up around 200 pounds in between the first and second fights, and the fight was at 147. So he definitely was not at his optimal weight. He was nowhere near his optimal weight. Wow. And he had to lose all that, man. And it was June and November. So what's that? June to July, August, September, 5 months. Because the first fight was in June 1980 and the rematch was in November 1980. So yeah, Roberto played mind games in the first one and Sugar Ray got him in the second one and made him get back in there real fast. But hey, two of the great ones though, the 4 kings. Best of friends now. Mm-hmm. You know, Sugar Ray, Roberto kind of like George Foreman, where George Foreman was a mean guy, all scowling all the time, not smiling, terrible interview. It'll be like one word answers or a grunt. When he was in an interview, and then he came back this smiley guy and happy all the time when he came back. Roberto was like that, like during his career, and then afterwards, man, he always cracking jokes and smiling, and I'm like, damn, that ain't Roberto Duran, you know? But yeah, like a totally different person, you know? From the man that with the hands of stone, you know. Remember what Joe Frazier said when the reporter asked Joe Frazier, does Roberto remind him of somebody? Remember? I told y'all the other day, Joe Frazier said, yeah, Roberto Duran remind me of Charles Manson. You know, he do have those little beady eyes like Manson. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, for only one of only 2 men to fight 5 decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And Jack Johnson was another one. I think Jack Johnson was like the 1890s, 2000s, 2010s, no, 1880s. No, 1890s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, and 2030s. Because Jack Johnson, for this last fight, he was 67 years old. The year before he had that fatal car accident. 67 years old, still in the ring fight. Wow. But not nobody. That's low level. Wasn't fighting no Joe Louis or Max Mellinger. Nobody like that. But he was still in there, Jack Johnson. And he had that name power, you know, it was Jack Johnson. I guess if he was 67, people still came to see him, you know. He was famous. And then the next year he had that fatal car crash. The profile Friday is Vernon Forrest. No, I said Juan Manuel Marquez. No, I mean Marco Antonio Barrera, but we're gonna do him next week. Vernon Forrest is Friday. Washington State tomorrow for the boxing in the state. We got I think two more states, I think. Because we got Washington. I might throw Washington DC in there. You know, it's not a state, but hey, it's a place. Let me see how many we got. I done let time get away from. We get some link time tomorrow. Damn, this week. We got Washington State. We got West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. 4 more to go. Washington State got a pretty good one tomorrow. I was looking at it yesterday. Washington State University had a pretty good boxing team back in the day. You know, like I told y'all, they had an NCAA boxing tournament back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. Excuse me. Then when that boxer got killed in the ring in the early 60s, that was it. A lot of schools dropped the program. The NCAA dropped the tournament. But yeah, Washington State had a pretty good boxing program. We're gonna talk about that tomorrow. And little history. Tacoma, Washington had a pretty good boxing history. And some boxers from Washington State. Had quite a few of them. I was looking at the thing, said like 20 something. So wow, we don't do all of them, but you know, some big name ones out of there. I forgot. Let me look. I forgot it was a real big name boxer came from Washington State. Household name boxer. Let me see if I can get it up real quick. Oh, come on. Nope. Then as soon as the show it'll come right up. Murphy's Law, right? Oh, I put boxing for Washington State. From. No wonder it didn't come up. From. Let's see. What happens now? There we go. Boxers. Man, still didn't come up. Came up yesterday. And maybe if I drop state, I don't know. Oh, there it is right there. That ain't it. Yes, it is. Let me see what the name was. Not Johnny Bumpkins. Greg Hargan is from Washington State. Y'all heard of him, haven't you? Greg Hargan, Boone Kirkman. Yeah. Oh, Rocky Lockridge. Pete Rademacher. He won an Olympic gold in 52. Then he fought Floyd Mayweather, not Floyd Mayweather, Floyd Patterson. His first professional fight was for the title. Pete Rademacher. We're going to talk about him tomorrow. Yeah. Straight out of the Olympics. He fought for a title. Oh, Leo Randolph. That's what I was thinking about. Leo Randolph wasn't funny. Sugar Ray Seals. So we got some, yeah. Pretty good ones. Pretty good names from Washington State. Yeah. Sugar Ray Seals. Yeah, Pete Rademacher, his first fight was for the title. Now, ain't that crazy? How in the world do you get your first fight to be for the title? Wow. You must have some real connections, right? I mean, 0-0, you're fighting for a world championship. Where they do that at, man? That's crazy. Think about that. 0-0. You fighting the champion of the world, heavyweight champion of the world, was Floyd Patterson, 1952. Straight off an Olympic gold medal, Pete Rademacher fought for the title. Right? Hear the ring announcer. In the blue corner with a record of 0-0, Pete Rademacher. Then over here, the world heavyweight champion, Floyd Patterson. What? That's crazy. That's good and crazy. That's worse than Loma. At least Loma waited till the second fight. This man got it in his first fight. Damn. But he lost, of course. Man, the heavyweight champion would have to erase his name out the history books. You lose your title to somebody making their debut fight. Wow. Damn. Wouldn't that would be bad. That would be bad. Heavyweight champion of the world. Any division, lose your title to a man making his debut. Wow. Okay. But let's see what we got. Just Do Boxing on the way. Tomorrow, boxing in the state, Washington State. Yeah, we got 4 more because I want to do Washington, D.C. too. Boxing in the district. Right, yeah. Yeah, we'll do Washington. Got some people from Washington, Lamont Roach. The Russells. Well, they're actually from Maryland, but near Washington. So yeah, we're gonna do Washington, D.C. So we got 5 more. Washington, D.C. will be next week. Right after Washington State. Then West Virginia, Wyoming, and what was the other one? Wisconsin? Yeah, Wisconsin. I'm trying to see what's going on with Just Do today. Let's see. We'll definitely get some link time tomorrow. Boxing. Coming up on Just Do Boxing. Today on Just Do Boxing. William Zepeda promises to knock Shakur out. Okay. William Zepeda promises to knock Shakur out. Just Do gonna be talking about that. De Los Santos. Keyshawn has power, but Shakur is a better boxer. De Los Santos says. De Los Santos. Keyshawn has power, but Shakur is a better boxer. Coming up next on Just Do Boxing. All right. So let's get prepared, get ready for that. Just Do. Yeah, that's crazy, ain't it? Al Booger? Debut fight. Getting a title shot. And Al Booker, can you imagine the champion losing the title to somebody making their debut fight? That would be bad. Wow, it was Floyd Patterson. Floyd beat. I think Floyd stopped him. I gotta check and see. Matter of fact, I'm gonna watch that fight. It's Floyd Patterson versus Pete Rademacher, 1952. That's the fight. It was Pete Rademacher's debut fight going for the heavyweight title against Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Patterson. Floyd Patterson. I'm gonna watch that. Yeah, see what happened. It's just worth seeing the introductions. 0-0 in this corner. Over there in that corner, the world champion. Ray Patterson, Thomas Hill, Define Arnie 1, Ant McQueen, Al Booker, Mike Mazik, Donnie Williams, Mike Rim, Akeem Shabazz, and the executive director of Cash Sports, Miss Cash. Hell, I need a raise, y'all. But I appreciate y'all 1,000%. And we're going to have Washington State tomorrow. Little history. Talks about some significant events that occurred in the state, like historical venues or some big fights that happened there. And then, of course, boxers from the state of Washington. Just went over some names. We're going to go in deep on them tomorrow, talk a little bit about their careers and everything. Because if it's Monday through Friday at 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing up next. This is Cash Sports. Everyone have a great afternoon.